What if I told you that CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, is at the heart of a mystery that could reshape our understanding of reality? Some believe that behind its scientific facade lies a deeper quest involving dimensions, portals, and ancient technologies. Whitney Webb, a renowned researcher, is delving into this fascinating theory, suggesting it might change everything we thought we knew about science and history. What secrets could CERN be hiding? Could it reveal forgotten knowledge or hidden connections to the ancient world? Stick around as we uncover the mysteries of CERN and explore the astonishing possibilities it presents. Dimensions, portals, and black holes. Let's start with a mind-boggling idea. The human mind can connect to 11 dimensions. Yes, you heard that right. According to some theories, we are surrounded by dimensions we can't even perceive. These dimensions could be the key to understanding portals and black holes. At CERN, with their powerful particle accelerators, some believe they are trying to tap into these hidden realms. In the world of theoretical physics, the idea of multiple dimensions isn't just science fiction. String theory, one of the most prominent frameworks in modern physics, suggests that the universe exists in 11 dimensions. While we experience life in 3 spatial dimensions plus time, the 4th dimension. String theory proposes that 7 additional dimensions exist beyond our perception. These extra dimensions could be compactified, meaning they are curled up so tightly that they are invisible to us. Imagine being able to step through a portal and instantly arrive in another universe, or another part of our universe. This concept, often seen in science fiction, becomes more intriguing with the idea of 11 dimensions. If these extra dimensions exist, they might allow for shortcuts through space-time, known as wormholes. Wormholes are theoretical passages through space-time that could connect distant points in the universe, making travel across vast distances feasible within a short time. Black holes, one of the most mysterious phenomena in the universe, might play a crucial role in this dimensional puzzle. A black hole is formed when a massive star collapses under its gravity, creating a point of infinite density called a singularity. The gravity near this point is so intense that not even light can escape. Some theories suggest that black holes could be gateways to other dimensions or universes. If matter falls into a black hole, it might be transported through a wormhole to a different location in space and time. CERN, home to the Large Hadron Collider, LHC, is at the forefront of experimental particle physics. The LHC is the world's most powerful particle accelerator, capable of smashing particles together at nearly the speed of light. These collisions create conditions similar to those just after the Big Bang, allowing scientists to study the fundamental building blocks of the universe. One of the key experiments at CERN is the search for evidence of extra dimensions. By analyzing the high-energy collisions in the LHC, scientists hope to detect signs of particles that might be escaping into these hidden dimensions. If such evidence were found, it would revolutionize our understanding of the universe. Other theories abound when it comes to CERN's experiments. Some believe that CERN is not just searching for new particles, but is actively trying to open portals to other dimensions. The idea is that by creating tiny black holes or high-energy states, the LHC could punch holes in the fabric of space-time, leading to these other realms. If CERN were to find a way to access these hidden dimensions, the implications would be staggering. It could lead to new forms of communication, travel, and even power generation. The ability to tap into other dimensions could unlock technological advancements beyond our current capabilities. However, it also raises questions about safety and ethics. What could happen if we inadvertently disrupt the balance of our universe? Could we unleash forces we don't understand? Interestingly, the idea of multiple dimensions isn't just rooted in modern physics. Many ancient cultures and mystical traditions speak of other realms and planes of existence. From the astral planes in Hinduism to the spiritual realms in shamanic practices, the concept of hidden dimensions has been a part of human thought for millennia. This convergence of ancient wisdom and modern science adds a layer of mystery to CERN's work. The theories about dimensions, portals, and black holes are not only fascinating, but also push the boundaries of our understanding. While CERN's official goal is to uncover the secrets of the universe at the smallest scales, the potential to tap into hidden dimensions fuels both scientific inquiry and the imagination. Whether these theories hold any truth or remain within the realm of speculation, they remind us that the universe is far more complex and mysterious than we can imagine. Ancient technologies and wormholes. What if CERN was never really about studying subatomic particles? What if, instead, they were after something much older and more mysterious? Some say that CERN's true purpose is to study ancient technologies that could help them build controlled wormholes. These wormholes could potentially connect distant points in space and time. Imagine ancient civilizations knowing such advanced concepts. There are many legends and myths suggesting that ancient cultures possess technological prowess that rivals, or even surpasses, our own. These tales often feature devices or structures that sound eerily similar to modern scientific theories. For instance, some ancient texts and artifacts hint at the existence of sophisticated machines and mechanisms capable of manipulating space and time. Could these be remnants of a forgotten era of technological mastery? One such piece of ancient lore is the concept of the wormhole, often referred to in scientific circles as the Einstein-Rosen bridge. Named after Albert Einstein and Nathan Rosen, who first proposed its existence, a wormhole is a theoretical tunnel through the fabric of space-time. It could connect two distant points, making travel between them instantaneous. This idea isn't just confined to the realm of science fiction. It has a basis in the equations of general relativity. Yet, creating or discovering a stable, traversable wormhole remains beyond our current technological capabilities, or so we think. Some theorists believe that the true purpose of CERN's Large Hadron Collider, LHC, is not merely to understand the fundamental particles of the universe, but to unlock the secrets of these ancient technologies. The idea is that by smashing particles together at incredibly high speeds, CERN might recreate the conditions necessary to form a wormhole. This would allow scientists to study its properties and perhaps learn how to control it. It's a thrilling thought, combining the cutting edge of modern physics with the enigmatic wisdom of the ancients. Consider the stories surrounding the legendary civilization of Atlantis. Many stories describe it as a technologically advanced society with capabilities far beyond what we understand today. Some interpretations even suggest that the Atlanteans mastered the use of wormholes, which might explain their sudden disappearance. If such a civilization did exist, and if they did possess such technology, it would make sense for modern scientists to seek out any remnants of their knowledge. Another intriguing aspect is the connection between ancient symbols and possible technological blueprints. Take the Ankh, the ancient Egyptian symbol of life. Some researchers propose that it might represent a key or device for accessing other dimensions or wormholes. Similarly, the Djed pillar, another prominent symbol in Egyptian culture, could be interpreted as a kind of technological diagram, hinting at devices used to stabilize or create these wormholes. These interpretations are far from mainstream, but they offer a tantalizing glimpse into what might be possible if we could decipher the true meanings behind these ancient symbols. Ancient texts like the Sumerian writings speak of Duranki, a term that translates to bond heaven-earth. This could be seen as a poetic description of a wormhole, a bridge connecting distant realms. Sumerian legends often speak of gods traveling great distances instantly, which some theorists argue could be an ancient understanding of wormhole travel. If such texts hold any truth, they might contain clues that modern scientists at CERN are eager to uncover. The potential to harness wormholes isn't just about scientific curiosity. It has profound implications for our understanding of the universe and our place within it. If CERN could unlock the secrets of these ancient technologies, it might lead to breakthroughs in energy, transportation, and even our conception of reality itself. Controlled wormholes could revolutionize how we travel, making interstellar journeys a reality and connecting distant parts of our galaxy, or even other galaxies, in ways we can barely imagine. Whether there's any truth to these theories or not, they remind us of the endless possibilities that lie at the intersection of science, history, and myth. As we explore the frontiers of physics, who knows what ancient secrets we might uncover? opening doors to other dimensions. The idea that CERN might be on the brink of opening doors to other dimensions is both thrilling and terrifying. But what if the high-energy collisions made by the Large Hadron Collider, LHC, at CERN could do more than just reveal the building blocks of matter? What if they could tear the very fabric of space-time, opening portals to other dimensions? If they succeed, we might find ourselves in a reality where the laws of physics as we know them no longer apply. Could they be on the verge of such a breakthrough? In theoretical physics, the concept of extra dimensions is not new. String theory, one of the leading candidates for a theory of everything, suggests that the additional dimensions we do not perceive are curled up in shapes so tiny they are undetectable to us. The idea is that these extra dimensions could influence our universe in ways we cannot yet fathom. Now imagine if the LHC could create conditions intense enough to access these hidden dimensions. According to some theories, the collisions at CERN might produce mini black holes or other exotic phenomena that could act as gateways to other realms. These events would be fleeting, but even a momentary glimpse into another dimension could revolutionize our understanding of reality. The potential for such discoveries raises both hope and fear. On one hand, accessing other dimensions could lead to breakthroughs in physics, technology, and our understanding of the universe. We could discover new particles, new forces, and perhaps even new forms of life. The ability to manipulate dimensions could revolutionize everything from transportation to energy production, leading to advancements we can scarcely imagine. On the other hand, the risks are profound. Tinkering with the fundamental structure of reality is not something to be taken lightly. What if opening a portal to another dimension had unintended consequences? Could we accidentally let something through that we cannot control or understand? The idea of unleashing unknown forces or entities into our world is a staple of science fiction and horror, but it is a concern that some scientists take seriously. One particularly intriguing aspect of this theory is the idea that CERN's experiments could explain phenomena like the Mandela effect. This is a situation where large groups of people remember events differently from how they occurred in this reality. Some suggest that if CERN is indeed opening portals to other dimensions, it could cause subtle shifts in our reality, leading to these discrepancies in memory. This theory suggests that each time a portal is opened, it might create tiny changes in the timeline, causing our collective memories to shift. The idea of accessing other dimensions ties into ancient myths and legends. These myths often describe portals or gateways that can be opened under certain conditions, allowing travel between worlds. It's fascinating to think that modern science might be on the verge of proving these ancient stories true. Another layer to this theory involves the potential military applications of accessing other dimensions. If a government or organization could control these portals, they might gain strategic advantages, such as instant transportation of troops or equipment. The idea of dimensional warfare, where battles are fought across different realities, might sound like science fiction, but it's a possibility that cannot be entirely dismissed. Higgs boson and portals. One of the key pieces in this puzzle is the Higgs boson, sometimes called the God particle. CERN scientists discovered it in 2012, and ever since, conspiracy theorists have speculated that they are using it to study how portals work. Could the Higgs boson be the missing link in opening these mysterious gateways? To understand the significance of the Higgs boson, we first need to grasp what it does. The Higgs boson is a fundamental particle associated with the Higgs field, a field that gives mass to other particles. Without the Higgs boson, particles would zip around the universe at the speed of light without forming atoms, and thus, matter as we know, it wouldn't exist. When CERN's Large Hadron Collider, LHC, detected the Higgs boson, it confirmed a critical part of the standard model of particle physics, which describes the fundamental forces and particles in the universe. However, the discovery of the Higgs boson opened up more than just scientific doors. It ignited other theories. They proposed that the Higgs boson could play a pivotal role in manipulating the fabric of reality itself. According to these theories, the Higgs field could be used to create or stabilize wormholes. This connection draws on the idea that controlling mass and gravity, key aspects influenced by the Higgs field, might allow us to bend space-time in novel ways. Imagine the possibilities of scientists harnessing the Higgs boson to manipulate space and time. One idea is that the energy levels generated by the LHC, combined with the properties of the Higgs boson, might allow the creation of tiny, short-lived wormholes. These wormholes could theoretically be expanded or stabilized to create portals to other parts of the universe, or even to other dimensions. While this sounds like science fiction, it's grounded in serious scientific speculation. The equations of general relativity do permit the existence of wormholes, but the challenge has always been finding a way to create and maintain them. The notion of using the Higgs boson to open portals taps into a deep-rooted human fascination with gateways to other realms. Throughout history, myths and legends from various cultures have spoken of portals to other worlds. From the Norse Bifrost, a bridge connecting Earth to Asgard, to the numerous tales of enchanted doorways in folklore. The idea of crossing into other dimensions is an enduring one. Today, as science inches closer to understanding the fundamental workings of the universe, these ancient dreams seem less far-fetched. Other theories also point to various anomalies and strange events that they claim are linked to CERN's experiments with the Higgs boson. For example, there have been reports of unusual weather patterns, unexplained power outages, and even mysterious Mandela effects. These theorists suggest that experiments with the Higgs boson might be causing ripples in space-time, leading to these bizarre occurrences. The Higgs boson, with its profound implications for mass and gravity, stands at the frontier of this speculation. Whether or not CERN is anywhere near opening portals to other dimensions, the discovery of the Higgs boson represents a monumental step in our quest to understand the universe. It's a reminder of both the incredible potential of scientific discovery and the boundless curiosity that drives humanity to explore the unknown. As we continue to probe the mysteries of the Higgs boson, who knows what other secrets of the universe we might uncover? The quest to understand the God particle may well be the key to unlocking the deepest mysteries of existence. NASA's X-points. Let's take a cosmic leap to NASA's X-points, mysterious portals around our planet that connect Earth's magnetic field to the Sun's. Some theorists believe that CERN's work might somehow be linked to these X-points, suggesting that both organizations are exploring ways to harness these natural portals. First, let's understand what X-points are. X-points, or electron diffusion regions, are areas in space where the magnetic field of Earth connects to the magnetic field of the Sun. These magnetic portals are formed through a process called magnetic reconnection, where magnetic field lines from different magnetic domains are forced together and realigned. When this happens, particles can travel between the Earth and the Sun, creating a kind of tunnel through space. These portals are transient, appearing and disappearing unpredictably, and provide a direct path for high-energy particles to flow. NASA's Themis mission, time history of events and macro scale. Interactions during substorms, and Europe's cluster probes have studied these X-points. By tracking particles and magnetic fields, they've observed how these portals open and close, offering new insights into the dynamics of space weather and its impact on Earth. However, for conspiracy theorists, this scientific explanation is just the tip of the iceberg. Some believe that the knowledge gained from studying X-points could be used to create or control similar portals on Earth, linking it to other parts of the universe. This is where CERN comes into the picture. While NASA focuses on natural cosmic portals, CERN's experiments with high-energy particle collisions might be an attempt to replicate or harness these phenomena artificially. The idea is that by understanding how X-points work, scientists could develop technology to stabilize and use these portals for transportation, communication, or even travel to other dimensions. The potential applications of harnessing X-points are staggering. Imagine being able to travel instantly to distant parts of the solar system, or even the galaxy, by stepping through a portal. Such technology could revolutionize space exploration, making it possible to reach other planets or stars in a matter of moments rather than years. It could also change the way we think about energy, allowing us to tap into the vast power of the sun or other celestial bodies. Of course, there are significant challenges and dangers associated with manipulating such powerful forces. Magnetic reconnection is a highly energetic process. Controlling it requires precise technology and understanding. There's also the question of what might happen if something goes wrong. Harnessing X points would require careful consideration and rigorous safeguards to ensure we don't inadvertently cause harm. This concept also ties into ancient myths and legends about gateways to other worlds. Many cultures speak of sacred sites where the veil between worlds is thin and travel between realms is possible. From the fairy mounds of Celtic mythology to the stargates of ancient Sumeria, the idea of natural portals has a long history. Some theorists suggest that these myths are based on real phenomena, natural X points that ancient people might have known about and used. The idea of portals also appears in modern pop culture, from the stargates in science fiction to the wormholes in space operas. These stories capture our imagination and reflect a deep-seated human desire to explore the unknown and transcend our physical limitations. The connection between NASA's X points and CERN's experiments feeds into this narrative, blending cutting-edge science with ancient mystery and speculative fiction. The Pyramids of the Sun and ancient texts. In Mexico, the Pyramids of the Sun are awe-inspiring structures with a mysterious past. Some ancient texts hint at the use of K2 metallite crystal, suggesting that these pyramids were not just tombs, but portals to other realms. Could these ancient monuments be linked to the same technologies that CERN is now exploring? Do ancient texts really point to wormholes? The Pyramids of the Sun is located in Teotihuacan, an ancient Mesoamerican city. These colossal structures have long fascinated archaeologists and historians due to their impressive size and alignment with celestial bodies. The Pyramids of the Sun and the nearby Pyramid of the Moon form part of a larger complex that includes temples and other significant buildings. The city's layout and the pyramid's construction reflect a deep understanding of astronomy, suggesting that the builders had advanced knowledge of the cosmos. The intriguing theory involving the K2 metallite crystal, according to some interpretations of ancient texts, is that these crystals were integral to the pyramid's purpose, potentially serving as energy sources or keys to other realms. K2 metallite is a rare and unique crystal that is said to have properties unlike any other mineral on Earth. The idea is that these crystals could generate or harness energy in ways we don't fully understand, possibly even creating or stabilizing portals to other dimensions. Ancient texts and legends often speak of the pyramids as more than just burial sites. In some stories, they are described as places of transformation, where the living could communicate with the gods or journey to other worlds. For example, the Maya, who inhabited regions near Teotihuacan, believed in a multi-layered universe with portals connecting different realms. Could the Pyramids of the Sun have been designed to access these portals? This theory suggests that the builders might have used advanced technology, now lost to time, to manipulate space-time itself. The idea of ancient civilizations possessing advanced technology isn't new. Many cultures have myths and legends about gods or ancestors who had incredible knowledge and capabilities. The ancient Egyptians, for example, built the Great Pyramids with precision, and some believe they had help from advanced beings or lost technology. Similarly, the Sumerians wrote about gods, traveling through the skies in chariots of fire, which some interpret as descriptions of advanced vehicles or even spacecraft. Returning to the Pyramids of the Sun, there is also the alignment with celestial bodies to consider. The builders of Teotihuacan aligned their city with the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, possibly to harness their energies. This mirrors modern scientific endeavors, where understanding the universe's fundamental forces can lead to groundbreaking discoveries. If the ancient builders did know how to access other realms, it would make sense that they aligned their structures with celestial events to tap into cosmic energies. Some researchers believe that these ancient texts and structures hold clues to understanding the nature of the universe. By studying them, we might uncover forgotten knowledge that could complement modern science. This could potentially bridge the gap between ancient wisdom and contemporary technology, leading to breakthroughs. Whether or not there is a direct link to the technologies being explored at CERN, or whether these theories hold any truth or are just flights of fancy, the parallels are striking. The mysteries of CERN, ancient technologies, and the fabric of our universe continue to captivate and intrigue us.
And so really what you're seeing here is this particular faction of oligarchs, sometime referred to as the so-called PayPal Mafia. These people, labeled subversives by Palantirs, could have their constitutional rights suspended if those protocols are ever invoked.
Guys like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk aren't just tech geniuses, they're chatting with intelligence agencies and federal folks behind the scenes.
Peter Thiel's important for a lot of reasons. I would, I guess, start off with Peter Thiel by noting that he co-founded PayPal. And so PayPal is sort of one of these ubiquitous, financial, sort of like fintech websites, one of the pioneers of the field, rather. And, from its earliest days, people that were involved in setting up PayPal, which includes people like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, it's been said by the people who were making that company alongside them that they were in discussions with intelligence agencies and federal agencies from the very beginning about what, those entities were, what they would support in a fintech company, essentially. And, as I reported back when I wrote for Mint Press, the involvement of the now PayPal owner of the who created The Intercept and sort of privatized these Snowden leaks. And a lot of them ended up, never coming out. Allegedly, some of the ones that never came out documented in detail PayPal's relationship to intelligence that has supposedly been ongoing for some time. But aside from PayPal, the clear indicator of intelligence ties with Peter Thiel comes in the form of Palantir, which he incorporated in 2003, but which didn't really start as a company around 2004, 2005. Its first funder was the CIA's venture capital arm, In-Q-Tel. The CIA was its only client until 2008. And between 2005 and 2009, the top engineers at Palantir say they made over 200 visits to CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, where the CIA directly guided and tweaked, their software products, which are now used by intelligence agencies around the world, as well as healthcare agencies. The HHS and CDC in the US use Palantir, so does the UK's NHS, and it's expanded really throughout the world. What is really arguably a CIA front company, as I've written in past reports on Palantir.
Thiel's creation of Palantir was basically him turning the defunded Total Information Awareness program into a private gig. Scary stuff.
The reason, or rather that what Alex Karp and Peter Thiel were interested in doing when they created Palantir was essentially privatizing the Total Information Awareness program that had just been defunded by Congress. Total Information Awareness is sort of an outgrowth of the Reagan-Bush era of domestic surveillance, schemes, some of which came up during the Iran-Contra proceedings and are linked to things like the continuity of government protocols and the main core database, which are efforts to sort of label people, label domestic dissidents as subversives, based on their online activity. And of course, in the 80s, it was based on other metrics, but now it's your online activity. So whatever data the NSA, for example, hoovers up about you, Palantir decides whether you're deemed subversive or not. And given the continuity of government protocols, which are still on the books, if the US government decides to invoke those, which can be under very vague circumstances, these people labeled subversives by Palantirs could have their constitutional rights suspended if those protocols are ever invoked. So Palantir's role in that, as far as the national security state goes, very nefarious, and they've been very involved in a lot of, other aspects of governance. It's gotten, increasingly bloated and large with over the years. Whether it's Elon Musk or David Sachs or Palmer Luckey or Palantir itself, a Palantir co-founder alongside Thiel named Joe Lonsdale, all beginning to dump millions of dollars per month in the same super PAC that's supporting the Trump-Vance ticket, only after that VP announcement was made. So clearly it seems like that particular network is quite convinced that Vance is going to be their guy when in office. And it's worth pointing out that a lot of these guys are very interested in dominating the digital financial system to come. For example, Elon Musk says that he plans to turn X, Twitter, into half of the financial system. And JD Vance has been on the Senate Banking Committee. He's involved in crypto regulation legislation that's being written and drafted. and going to be put before Congress. And it's very likely that he'll be involved in choosing the kingmakers of that, like, PayPal's very own recently launched stablecoin, and any of these others, companies and currencies that they're, intimately connected to.
People are raising eyebrows over programmable, surveillable money because it sounds like a privacy nightmare waiting to happen.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about the move into central bank digital currencies, for example, or CBDCs. And there's been a lot of criticism around those because of the idea of it being programmable, surveillable money. But for money to be programmable and surveillable, it doesn't necessarily have to be issued by a central bank. It can be also issued by the private sector. And you can add that same type of Orwellian surveillance and the concerns about programmability, deciding what you can or can't buy based on various metrics, or, based on your online activity, or the claims of a coming social credit system and all of that. You can have that issued by the private sector, no problem. And so there's been efforts to sort of to make a digital dollar in the United States, and there's been concern that there would be a CBDC in the United States, and that's certainly been happening in other countries, but I think in the United States it's increasingly unlikely, especially considering that the Federal Reserve in the United States is essentially owned by the private Wall Street banks, and if you're a central bank digital currency, then the central bank is doing a lot of the job that Wall Street banks normally do, and Wall Street banks want to keep the two-tier system of private banking and central banking as it exists today. So they're most likely to be the issuers of that currency. And I think PayPal, in some of my recent reporting on my website, Unlimited Hangout, have focused a lot on how there's efforts by these groups that are either ex-PayPal or who currently own PayPal, to have PayPal and a lot of the companies that are intimately connected to it, for example, like Latin America's Mercado Libre, to be the rails on which all of these digital currencies will run, and to essentially dominate the field. And it's very likely that PayPal's PYUSD is going to be a major contender in that.
The fact that Thiel, Musk, and other Silicon Valley big shots, especially with their PayPal ties, are pulling the strings is a pretty big deal.
A lot of, other dollar stablecoins maybe as well, like Tether, which was intimately tied up with the FTX scandal, or Circle, which has a very intimate relationship with Larry Fink's BlackRock. Any of these, but essentially which, digital dollar coins are going to win. That's not going to be all be determined by regulation legislation that's being written. And has to be approved first, right, by the Senate Banking Committee, on which J.D. Vance sits. And so, having these particular Silicon Valley figures all tied to PayPal influence him, I think in that context, is somewhat, significant, because regulation determines the winners and the losers in the market that it's regulating, right? And so, if the people writing the bill all have ties to the same, companies that want to be winners, they can be favored, right, at the legislative level, and, have their, work cut out for them essentially, and come to dominate the market. And, PayPal has expressed for a long time they want to dominate the market. You have Peter Thiel on record saying that PayPal was created to replace the US dollar. So there's a lot of, things happening here, and what you'd have, as a consequence of that, would be the people that run PayPal, who, in recent years have just been censoring people for things they've written and stuff like that. They're the ones that would be capable of programming and surveilling your money. And, that's very unfortunate, especially when you consider the connections of, someone like Pierre Omidyar, who owns PayPal right now, which I wrote about Press, several years ago. And I know that Max Blumenthal also did an investigative series for Mint Press on our Pierre Omidyar. That's very important. I would encourage people to look at those to learn more about the people that are essentially running this company. And also, the other people that make up this particular network that is very connected to the so-called, PayPal mafia, and really the PayPal co-founders. I mean, the intelligence ties abound. And I think it's a lot of them frame themselves as, pro-Constitution, pro-freedom and all of this. But, a lot of their business decisions reflect something else entirely. And I think it's, important to warn people about this.
Whether something's planned or just happens naturally, the powerful always seem to come out on top.
I think some of it might have to do with, the other weekend's events, the attempted things like that really rile people up. And I think regardless of whether one thinks an event like that is inorganic or organic, it doesn't really matter. The powers that be at the end of the day, when the American public, or really the public of any nation, is very emotional and very riled up, they're more easy to manipulate. And you better believe that they make efforts to sort of use that emotional energy to nudge people in a particular direction. And so I think, that's something people should consider there. And I think obviously, that's going to, it seems like it's had the effect of sort of rallying people around Trump and making them, his supporters, much more enthusiastic than they perhaps were before about his candidacy. And I also think a major factor, too, that we can't ignore is the fact that Peter Thiel is a major funder of independent and alternative media. Not Mint Press, not me, and definitely there's plenty of other journalists who are not funded by Peter Thiel, but a lot of the biggest names are. And, for example, when Tucker Carlson went independent from Fox, he entered into talks relatively shortly thereafter with Peter Thiel, who was going to finance him. I'm not sure if that's confirmed or not, but it's definitely, worth considering, especially since Tucker Carlson was one of the major people lobbying Trump to select J.D. Vance as his vice presidential candidate. And of course, Peter Thiel is a major investor in Rumble, which is an alternative to YouTube that tends to appeal mainly to right-leaning audiences. And a lot of the figures on there, the biggest names anyway, many of them are all in on this particular ticket, and, receive some sort of financial compensation, from Thiel-funded Rumble to post their videos there.
Whitney points out that while some folks bash Thiel, they don't really get just how deep his influence runs.
Obviously, that's not true for everyone that's in the contractual situation. For example, Jimmy Dore recently had me on to talk about how awful Peter Thiel is for over an hour. But there certainly are people that I think aren't inclined to criticize him. I mean, he is a very powerful figure, and a lot of people in media, unfortunately, are funded by him. And there's been sort of this increased, effort to sort of, well, we've seen it for a long time, like with The Intercept, for example, and Pierre Omidyar are sort of launching this sort of what was framed then as this dissident outlet. These billionaires sort of coming out and framing themselves as the saviors of journalism. We've seen that more recently with Elon Musk and, the Twitter files, and his efforts, his claims of buying Twitter to turn it into a free speech platform, though I would argue that his motives are something else entirely. And he's essentially said that they're, the main factors were something else. So he wants to bring back his original X.com, which is what he brought to PayPal back in the late 90s when he and Peter Thiel teamed up. He said he wants it to be half of the financial system. He wants to turn essentially what was Twitter into a bank. And his other ambition, I would argue, is to hoover up all the user data to train his AI. He has an AI company that produces the Grok chatbot, which is now integrated into Twitter, and of course is a competitor, to OpenAI's ChatGPT and all of that. But it can, have unique access to all of that user data. I would argue it's for, algorithmic training. And other things as well. And then another one of his ambitions, as he said, is to verify all humans on the platform, which means linking your government-issued ID to your social media account, which is a part of this broader effort that includes PayPal, and also the FBI and the Secret Service and his intelligence, to end online anonymity, specifically on social media networks, and prevent people from using an anonymous account, or really having any sort of privacy online, period.
They'd been piloting the verification of government-issued IDs ever since Elon Musk took over X.
And that's essentially what would happen. And then the first people they've been piloting the verification of government-issued IDs ever since Elon Musk took over. And the first company he had was called Authentics, which is, I believe, created by former members of Shin Bet security agency. And he recently switched because of backlash over that to Stripe, which Peter Thiel is a major investor of. So keeping it all in the family. Yeah, so I don't really want to pick fights with anyone necessarily, but I sort of do disagree with a lot of that rhetoric. And I think it's very hard to frame yourself as a libertarian, someone who's against, big government, right? And then see a hero in someone like Peter Thiel, who claims to be a libertarian, but, as I mentioned earlier, his actions are quite different. He's not into free market competition, and he has given the national security state the worst parts of the federal government, the most powerful tools that they're using to directly undermine our constitutional rights, our freedoms, and our privacy. And so I think, generally libertarians are anti-surveillance state and all of these things, and it's very hard to reconcile those positions with support of someone like Peter Thiel, or someone who's so intimately connected to him, and frame them as a populist hero, when really they're tied to someone who, if anything, is an enabler of faux populism that really at the end of the day isn't pushing populism or promoting so much the public as rising up and saving itself or saving the country, but more so, let's look to all of, this squad of billionaires that will save and rescue us.
The idea that Elon Musk is here to save free speech is more of a fairy tale than reality, spun by those who benefit from the tech-government crossover.
And there's been a lot of talk sort of like that in these particular networks of Elon Musk is saving the country and saving free speech and all of this. For example, one of the Twitter files, reporters, Michael Schellenberger recently tweeted, Elon Musk is the only thing standing between us and complete tyranny. This is a person who's a Pentagon contractor, an intelligence contractor, building spy satellites for the CIA. He's intimately tied up with Netanyahu recently, or was one of the attendees at Netanyahu's recent speech before Congress, and has been, very vocal about his support of and what it's been doing in the territories and in which is just mind-boggling. But he's also making a brain machine interface, a brain chip for people. It's just, for me, it doesn't make a lot of sense that people want to look to these billionaire businessmen as our saviors just because we're told particular narratives about them, or that there's been efforts by Hollywood to frame them as, Tony Stark in real life and all of this. I think that's sort of just the effort to manufacture heroes. But I don't think these billionaires are going to save us. You don't become a billionaire in the United States with close ties to the national security state without doing horrible things and playing ball with the worst elements of our government and our corporate, in the corporate sector. And I, think that unfortunately it has to be a combination of financial incentive as well as perhaps naivety in some cases, but I think the financial incentive cannot really be ignored. Elon Musk, and I'm sure as part of his efforts to turn X into a bank, has become a key source of monetizing for a lot of journalists and influencers and content creators on Twitter. Some of them have posted that they make thousands of dollars a month. I see Elon Musk as a person who has like a very specific persona he wants to project to the public, and then there's business Musk, right?
Whitney Webb critically examines Elon Musk's dominance in the tech industry, highlighting his significant impact on several sectors.
I don't want you to necessarily take my opinion or take, what I write about it at just face value and just believe me, and no, believe the source material because it matters and I'm not making this up.
However, Webb raises concerns about the concentration of power and influence that comes with Musk's growing empire.
Are you aware that bankers lie and engage in illegal activity to expand their money and power, right? Are you aware that those same bankers, CEOs or whoever, are the bulk of donations to politicians?
Martin Luther King Jr. was a pivotal figure in the American civil rights movement. King's efforts were crucial in the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
According to a case that was won by Martin Luther King Jr.'s family in the late 90s, Hoover's FBI was responsible for killing Martin Luther King Jr. There was a civil trial that was brought by King's own family, and they said, and the result of that was, it was the FBI. If nothing happened to them then, what do you think's going on now? My problem is that I feel like, thinking about like my own family, for example, and how they like view my work, or my grandparents, people like that, the way they were told things worked is not the way things were really working then. And a lot of the American public, in my opinion, has sort of been fed this fairy tale that the government is your friend, the government's here to help. But essentially, if you look at the history, the government's the mob.
Look at a human life. You come out of the womb, and you're immediately influenced in your perceptions by your parents who've been through the process you're about to go through. Very soon, ludicrously soon, after entering this world, you find yourself sitting at a desk with an authority figure now telling you what is, what isn't, what's right, what's wrong, what's credible, what's not credible, when you can go to the toilet, when you can eat, when you can talk. And this goes on through your formative years, where the system's version of everything, what I call the postage stamp consensus, because it's so narrow, is downloaded into people. And then they go off into the institutions, they become journalists, they become scientists, they become doctors, they become politicians, they become CEOs or whatever. And they take with them that core version of normal they've been, and limitation possibility, that they have been downloading all their lives. And then the people in these institutions then confirm to each other that this norm is normal. So a journalist who's doing a story about, say, a health situation won't go to an alternative practitioner who may have had great success in it. He'll go to a doctor who'll give him postage stamp normal.
Obviously, there's going to be people, who are resistant to seeing things for the way they are because, some people just, for whatever reason, feel too uncomfortable engaging with reality sometimes. They don't want to face the fact that the government and corporations are like extremely doing insane illegal stuff that's killing people or stealing insane amounts of money from people and ruining people's lives because they're like, well, I can't do anything to change that. And I don't necessarily think that's true, but some people interpret it that way and they're like, I'm better off not engaging with this, and they prefer to stick their head in the sand, so to speak. So, for example, Elon Musk, a lot of people maybe forget, he's a big military contractor. And also, the Space Force, that's also an intelligence agency. So he's technically a military and intelligence contractor. In order to keep your contracting business with those things, there's certain rules you have to play by, and certain things, I would assume, you can and can't say, or you'll lose those lucrative contracts. And if you look at someone like Elon Musk and his business history, a lot of his companies would not have been successful without significant subsidies from the government. So, I feel like in order to get those deals, there's certain rules you have to abide by to an extent, at least when it comes to your business decisions and certain things, right? So maybe he wants to project, this persona of like, I'm one of the bros, I'm one of the guys, I believe in free speech and all of this. And certainly when he bought Twitter, that's what he said, but then it became, oh yeah, free speech, but not freedom of reach. And now it's sort of changing again with the appointment of this new CEO. And again, I don't really have any high hopes, and I didn't necessarily when Musk bought Twitter, just because I tend to be kind of skeptical, and I guess you could probably say cynical about these types of people. And, I personally, just from my own, experience with Epstein research, I have found Musk not to be very upfront about some of those connections there. So, for example, he'll be like, a lot of people like to bring up the picture of him and Ghislaine Maxwell from 2014. He'll say he was photobombed and all of this. But, he won't bring up the fact, well, at least reporters seem to have forgotten, that Kimball Musk, his brother, who's on the board of Tesla and SpaceX, was introduced to a member of Epstein's entourage who had dated Epstein and lived at the apartments on 301 66th Street East, where all these traffic girls lived. A girl from there starts dating Kimball Musk, and somehow Epstein is allegedly granted access to SpaceX facilities and tours, and then is allegedly advising Tesla, according to the New York Times reporter James Stewart, who was told by someone else that Epstein was advising Tesla, and then goes, before Epstein's 2019 arrest and most of his public infamy, goes and asks him about if the rumors were true, and Epstein says yes. And this is during a time when Musk is saying he's trying to secure capital to take Tesla private, I believe, and this was allegedly involving one of the Saudi wealth funds of the Saudi government. And at that time, Epstein was a very, very close advisor to Mohammed bin Salman, who had recently come to power. And if you remember back to when the Epstein story the scandal sort of broke in 2019, it wasn't just talking about his townhouse having all these pictures of him and Clinton. There were a lot. Elon Musk you have to look at the actions of Musk and then what he says. And not enough people do that, whether it's for Musk or really anyone. You have to look at people's actions, not just what they say, because someone can say all the right things and then, be totally fucking you behind your back. And if you're just going to take what they're telling you and the excuses and whatever, you'll never figure out what's actually going on. And I think that's fair for Elon Musk as well. Did he buy Twitter to save free speech, or did he buy Twitter to have a massive data to train AI on and to train all other sorts of products he has on? Or did he make it like he's openly admitted? Did he buy it so he can turn Twitter, now X, into X the everything app that doesn't just become isn't just social media, it becomes half of the financial system and becoms American WeChat. Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, but is he the richest man in the world just because of his own entrepreneurial whatever? Or is it because his companies were held up by government subsidies that allowed him to become rich, and he's the richest man in the world because he worked with the state? Because, corporate media, right? Mainstream media, whatever, they don't really supply their sources a lot of the time for certain things, or they cite, a national security official and don't challenge what they have to say at all, or like add any important historical context about how maybe that official got caught lying during the Iraq War, for example, or all sorts of kind of stuff like that. So I try and add that kind of context. And frankly, though, there's like a lot of stories that just don't get covered either by mainstream media or even independent media. So much of independent media today is focused on like complaining about mainstream media coverage and not necessarily reporting on original stuff, which I think is actually kind of a big problem, because I think at this point we all know that mainstream media sucks, right? So there's definitely a need to like try and find the stories that aren't being covered, because there's, a lot of stuff, I think even too, intentionally, like some of the tactics of mainstream media and the people that control them is to put out a story that's like intentionally annoying and outrageous so that everyone focuses on that and doesn't focus on other stuff in the news cycle, and other important stuff that is happening, slips through the cracks.
That there is a plan to make Orwell's 1984 reality. We're seeing this, of course, with more and more control of people's privacy and the constant gathering of fine, detailed data of people's lives. But the key thing is this. What directs people's lives? What directs their opinions? What directs their behavior? Their perceptions. Their perceptions of themselves, their perceptions of the world, their perceptions of world events.
The way they're sold those events.
Yeah. Now, this is the point. Where do we get those perceptions from? We get them from information received. It might be a personal experience information, or it might be the 10 o'clock news, or it might be the Daily Mail, or something on Facebook. The point is, if you control the information that people receive, then you will, to a vast extent, dictate their perceptions.
So think about what happened during COVID, and there were all these signals sent by powerful people that something greater than COVID would soon be upon us, whatever that is. So whether it's a giant war, another world war of that sorts, or, something else, COVID 2.0, what we saw during COVID, insane issues with inflation that persist, right? And insane supply chain issues. It's probably a good idea to have a supply of stuff you need to survive in your house. For X number of days, weeks, months, whatever. That's different for every person, but it's definitely not, it's definitely not a bad idea. And I don't think it's a tinfoil hat thing to say like, oh, I'd like to be able to feed my family if they close all the grocery store. We sort of saw with COVID, like how insane it was. I live in Chile and in South America. And there, when COVID started, there was some insane stuff there where you had to like show papers to get into grocery stores and stuff for a time. Like that could come back, it's not as crazy now as it might have been like 4 or 5 years ago to talk about that stuff. And there's nothing wrong with being prepared. There's probably something more wrong with being not prepared at all. But, a lot of times government incompetence is the excuse. So, I mean, just talking about like financial policy and stuff. I mean, I think it's easier to pick apart in those cases because you can see the obvious who benefits and who doesn't sometimes more easily. And they'll sort of be oh, well, we just, when the Fed printed a bunch of money during COVID and gave it to BlackRock to manage, was that incompetence? Especially when BlackRock wrote a plan at the end of 2019 of the monetary policy that the Fed followed exactly when COVID happened about what the Fed would need to do during an unforeseen crisis. I mean, it's just was that incompetence or is that corruption? And so, I mean, a lot of times they try and absolve themselves of when they sort of get caught or start to get caught for something corrupt, they'll be oh, don't look any further. We're just really stupid.
Now, I've just come back literally a few days ago from America. I've been filming there, and particularly Silicon Valley. I call it the Devil's Playground. If you now look at that, what is, when you visit it, a very small area of America, never mind the world, you've got companies that Facebook, Google, etc., that are increasingly, dominating the gathering of data of people's lives, B, because of the way they have so impacted upon the channels of communication, they dictate to such an increasing extent what people see and what people don't see.
They're trying to put AI in charge of the internet, and not just in charge of censoring what's on the internet, but also having AI make the lion's share of online content. So supposedly by 2025, generative AI like ChatGPT is going to produce 96 or something % of everything you read online, which means their mainstream media journalists are going to be completely replaced by them. I think there have been some magazines that have been caught using ChatGPT to write their stories already. I think Sports Illustrated was one. But
wow.
only going to get crazier. And so when you have AI both producing and then curating, i.e. censoring, everything, then AI dominates the information environment, and whoever programs AI and stipulates what information is okay and who isn't has unprecedented control. And when you consider that most people today get their information from online or, digital sources, that's unprecedented control of what people, not just how the information that people read and receive, but also, I mean, you're manipulating how people perceive reality. And that obviously translates into how people behave. And actually, Henry Kissinger, who I'm sure died recently, and the guy that he named as his heir, which is Eric Schmidt, the former Google CEO, wrote a book on AI explicitly about that, and how AI is basically going to control how we perceive reality by taking control of online content in its entirety. And that us becoming increasingly dependent on AI for everything is going to cognitively diminish people so that we won't be able to perceive reality or make sense of anything without AI doing it for us.
Facebook has had to say, actually, we're not doing it on purpose, or it's just for advertising. They are actually listening to conversations. Obviously, you've not got a human being sitting there, although if they're targeting someone, it's a human being. But the general population, it's algorithms. We're talking AI now. I mean, the possibilities of human manipulation of communication and the gathering of data now are limitless increasingly.
I mean, I think the whole idea of getting a lot of people to use ChatGPT and all of this stuff is to lead us down this path that Kissinger and Schmidt, among others, sort of are charting out for humanity, where if you, it's pretty much common sense though. If you develop a skill and then don't do it for 10 or 15 years, for example, you kind of forget how to do it, right? Or even, I graduated from university a little more than 10 years ago. How well do I recall the stuff that I took in university? Not great, right? So there's this whole idea of if you don't use it, you lose it. So if people are depending on AI to tell them where to turn when they're driving their car, and no one uses actual maps anymore. I mean, I understand that it's convenient, right? And I'm not saying we need to go back to the 90s, but right. But it becomes after a while a slippery slope where people are just having the computer tell them everything to do. Every step of their lives ends up becoming micromanaged to an extent. And the idea is that AI, through all the data that it absorbs about us, knows so much about us. Some of these people say it knows us better than we even know ourselves. There's that allows for an unprecedented degree of manipulation. And the problem is that the people producing and programming AI and ultimately controlling AI and what it can do not have our best interests at heart. And it is not a good idea to basically hand them our brains in a bag. Who owns AI, right? It's pretty much Silicon Valley companies. So like even OpenAI, Sam Altman's thing, that's essentially like owned by Microsoft, right? And so you have Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Oracle, all of these companies essentially owning like almost everything. And all of those companies are contractors for the military and intelligence, right? Guess throw Palantir in the mix too. And when you consider something like Palantir, they profile people. They suck up all of your data and then they profile you. And Palantir can profile like whether or not they deem you subversive or not. And what happens when AI, gets access of that and gets put in control of things like humanitarian aid, like they're talking about doing, or in charge of, the government itself, which is also talked about in the Schmidt-Kissinger book. It gets complicated. So, a lot of people have been talking about the coming sort of like social credit paradigm, for example. So what happens if there's a big crisis, your country is like a war zone or the economy collapses and you're dependent on humanitarian aid or some sort of aid from the government or some other group and there isn't enough for everyone, right? And so they decide, oh, well, it's fairer to put super intelligent AI in charge of it. And then that AI is like, oh, well, this person's been very compliant and hasn't committed all of these thought crimes, but not you. Who is it going to decide to give the food rations to and stuff like that? That's the risk of a lot of this stuff when it gets put in charge of too many systems. And then there's like a whole other side to it when you're dealing with stuff like AI weaponry, which we're seeing being used right now in the Israel-Gaza conflict to a significant degree, where they're deciding assassination targets, suppose people that they're deeming to be Hamas affiliated, which no one knows exactly how they're determining that. I mean, it could be someone who is a second cousin of someone in Hamas or something. We don't really know because there's no transparency. But obviously, the fact that they've gone from before this AI algorithm to identifying something like 15 to 20 targets a day to identifying hundreds of targets a day, something's going on.
Nature of the AI that's running things concentrates that power in such a small area and such a small number of hands. And if you want to have control by the few of the vast number, you have to centralize power. And that's what is happening in Silicon Valley on a scale that beggars belief.
And then there's another issue of whether AI is actually accurate or not. So, they'll say, like with facial recognition, I think there was a report a few years ago in the UK that a lot of the facial recognition stuff that the Met Police and other law enforcement groups are using are insanely inaccurate, but they want to continue using it and like deepen its involvement in identifying people, whether it's like at live events and all sorts of stuff. And I mean, it was insanely inaccurate. I mean, I can't remember the exact amount, but it was like under 50% accurate. So like flipping a coin is more accurate in that case. And what happens when AI algorithms that choose who lives and who dies, are put in charge of stuff and they're like 70% accurate or less? Because, I mean, the government's really corrupt with contractors. Like they don't always pick the best contractor for the job. So someone has connections that gets their AI in charge and they oversell their AI and say it's 90% 95% accurate, but it's not audited by an independent company, right? And so it's actually like in reality 65% accurate or something. And you're putting it in charge of like stuff that has a major effect on people's lives. That kind of stuff is happening. And I'm talking about stuff that hasn't necessarily quite happened yet, but we're headed there.
When the internet started, and which came out of an organization called DARPA, by the way, which is the technological development arm of the Pentagon, it was sold as the free flow of information. You could post all kinds of opinions. Now, if that didn't start like that, and right from the start is you can't say that, you can't do that, then it wouldn't have got this massive control and influence on the communications that go on between people. So you start with what people want. And then, especially more recently, and faster, you start doing, especially when you enter the realm of semi-monopoly, you start taking away the freedom of the free flow of information. So people now are having YouTube channels just deleted. No explanation, just deleted. On a big scale when they're challenging the official narrative.
It's going to become very different for a lot of different reasons. So I guess the risk with using like ChatGPT or generative AI, for example, is like if you use it too much that like you can't write without it, right? That's like the stuff people need to try and manage, I think. As far as, what happens when all the content becomes ChatGPT, essentially, right? I mean, it's not really going to be very useful to people, but there's a lot of people that aren't really going to be able to notice so much the difference because it's like legible English and it kind of makes sense and, but it's not going to be like human thought anymore. Though there was a problem identified, I think, several months ago that once, these AI algorithms start training off of data that humans didn't produce, and it's training off of data or like content that it produced itself or another generative AI produced, its output becomes like gobbledygook, nonsensical stuff. So, I mean, it might just break itself. We'll see what happens, or if they're able to, I guess, remedy that. But regardless of that, the internet is going to change a lot. And this is a very like separate thing than what we've been talking about so far. But there's a deliberate push to regulate the internet. Obviously, there is some truth to the fact that it does make certain things more convenient. It does technically free up certain people's jobs so they can have more time to do other stuff. Yeah. The problem is literally the worst people in the world are in charge of it. And they want to use it to make everyone basically a complete idiot that's super easily manipulated and controllable. And that is what needs to be resisted. So, if someone wants to make like an open source AI that, I don't know, does some stuff, I mean, I'm not going to be like, no, don't do that. But, I think it's very important now more than ever to divest as much as possible from big tech, Google and Oracle and, all these other companies, Amazon, what have you, because they have too much power. The people in charge have obvious problematic agendas. And they basically, at least in the US, they own the government.
Anderson Cooper is explaining the candidates in the election, covering their backgrounds, key positions, and what they stand for. He highlights their strengths and weaknesses to help viewers understand each candidate better.
With that, we invite all of you to take the official ridiculous approval poll. Was the president's survey embarrassing, utterly pointless, a shameless exercise in narcissism, or other?
But the president of the United States was not able to make that case to Donald Trump on the stage tonight.
Some members of Kamala Harris's party are currently debating whether President Biden should consider stepping aside to allow for a new candidate to take the lead.
Some within your own party are wondering if President Biden should even step aside. What do you say to that?
Listen, first of all, what we saw tonight is the president making a very clear contrast with Donald Trump on all of the issues that matter to the American people.
Kamala Harris believes that although things started off slowly, they ended strongly and successfully.
Yes, there was a slow start, but it was a strong finish. And what became very clear through the course of the night is that Joe Biden is fighting on behalf of the American people, on substance, on policy, on performance. Joe Biden is extraordinarily strong.
The president's performance tonight was disappointing for his supporters who had hoped for a strong and impactful presentation.
On substance and policy and performance tonight, I mean, the president's performance tonight clearly was disappointing for his supporters. CNN is reporting Democratic lawmakers watching the debate were worried about the president's performance. One said it was a disaster. Another called it a train wreck. Those are Democrats especially worried that Biden did not punch back on Trump's lies.
People can debate style and presentation, but what really matters for the President of the United States is substance.
Listen, people can debate on style points, but ultimately this election and who is the President of the United States has to be about substance. And the contrast is clear. Look at what happened during the course of the debate.
Kamala claims that Trump has repeatedly lied, as he seems to have a pattern of doing so.
Donald Trump lied over and over and over again, as he is wont to do. He would not disavow what happened on January 6th. He would not give a clear answer on whether he would stand by the election results this November. He went back and forth about where he stands on one of the most critical issues of freedom in America, which is the right of a woman to make decisions about their own body.
He has been completely ambiguous about where he stands on that issue, as he has avoided giving definitive answers or detailed explanations.
He has been completely ambiguous and all over the place about where he stands on that issue, despite the fact that he hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade, and that's exactly what they did. And just 3 years ago, we commemorated the 2-year anniversary of Dobbs, wherein women across our country have been denied emergency health care.
The President of the United States was unable to effectively make that case to Donald Trump on the stage.
That may be true. All that may be true. But the President of the United States was not able to make that case to Donald Trump on the stage tonight. I mean, you debated against then Vice President Biden 4 years ago, and he was a very different person on the stage 4 years ago when you debated him. That's certainly true, is it not?
Kamala pointed out that the primary focus should be on evaluating the president's performance based on their actual achievements.
Anderson, the point has to be performance in terms of what a president does. A president who incites an insurrection against the Capitol. No, but I got the point that you're making about a 1.5-hour debate tonight. I'm talking about 3.5 years of performance in work that has been historic.
But whether it be the man who we saw on the stage tonight, is that the person you see in meetings every day?
The person that you saw on the debate stage that has, for the last 3.5 years, up until today, performed in a way that has been about, whether it be in the Oval Office, negotiating bipartisan deals, so that we have an infrastructure, a real infrastructure plan where we're putting trillions of dollars on the streets of America to upgrade our infrastructure. Whether it be the person I see in the Oval Office who is meeting with heads of the military and the intelligence community and in the Situation Room, ensuring the safety of America. The person I see in Joe Biden on the world stage, convening world leaders who often ask for his advice. Most recently, just during the G7 conference. So I'm not going to spend all night with you talking about the last 90 minutes when I've been watching the last 3.5 years of performance.
Or the New York Times editorial board called for President Biden to drop out. One of his advisors told CNN today that not only would he not exit the race, quote, there's nothing that voters have indicated that they agree with that. Reminder that it's what voters who will ultimately decide whether Biden's age or Trump's lies and character issues are the most important factors in the race. Last night and today, our Gary Tuchman spent time speaking with voters in the battleground state of Georgia who watched the debate. Some people within your party are wondering if President Biden should step aside, but Corey Sellers, who was on earlier tonight, just saying that's not going to happen, and it's just impossible. The New York Times editorial board, as you know, has called for him to do so. What do you think?
Everyone needs to take a moment to calm down. It was just one bad night, and such an event does not define the entire campaign.
Look, I think everyone needs to calm down a little bit. It was a bad night. There was a poor performance, but one night does not make a campaign, and it does not erase 3.5 years of stellar leadership that has brought our country back to the forefront on a global stage, has protected democracy around the world and here at home, and has benefited the vast majority of Americans, lower class, middle class Americans, through some historic legislation. And when you compare what you saw from Joe Biden last night to what you saw from Donald Trump, you realize that this is a choice, ultimately, in November, of someone who is a decent, honest man of integrity, who has served his country his entire life, against a felon who is an inveterate liar and only cares about himself. And so, yes, the New York Times is correct. The stakes are very high. But let's not go with this double standard where we just normalize Donald Trump's absurd behavior and absolute outrageous lies of denying January 6th, his refusal to accept the results of the election, his pride at overturning Roe v. Wade and taking reproductive freedom away. That is what the choice is. That's who we're dealing with here. And ultimately, it's convenient for the New York Times to say, oh, Joe Biden should step down. Why aren't they saying that Donald Trump should step down? They're just always apologizing and normalizing for Donald Trump. And frankly, Anderson, that's what happened last night on the debate stage. Nobody fact-checked Donald Trump when he was blatantly lying over and over and over again.
Starting out to be another big week for Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. She trying to build on last week's momentum. He figuring out how to refocus his campaign on her and not Joe Biden. Both are in a race to define or be defined.
When discussing Trump and J.D. Vance, some people are using weird words to attack them.
In the case of Vice President Harris and the Democrats, that definition is, in a word, weird. I'm talking about Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Here's Pennsylvania Governor, potential running mate Josh Shapiro, using that word about the former president at a joint appearance this evening with Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
I have to laugh. You ever see this guy? Like when he's on a stage, he kind of meanders over, can't really walk well, and he goes over to the flag and he hugs the flag. I mean, I love the flag, but it's a weird thing he does, right?
Well, the focus on the word weird began with another possible VP pick, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and has become the chosen Democratic definition of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Well, it's already raising questions, that word, including from New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman, who weighed in today under the headline, Democrats could regret calling Trump and his supporters weird. Quoting him now, I cannot think of a sillier, more playground, more foolish, and more counterproductive political taunt for Democrats to seize on than calling Trump and his supporters weird. As for Trump and his running mate, here's a sample of their attack lines from over the weekend.
She was a bum 3 weeks ago. She was a bum. A failed vice president in a failed administration with millions of people crossing, and she was the border czar. Now we have a new candidate to defeat the most incompetent, unpopular, and far-left vice president in American history.
The people are going to learn her record. They're going to learn that she's a radical. They're going to learn that she's basically a San Francisco liberal who wants to take San Francisco policies to the entire country.
Also over the weekend, Senator Vance, who still seems to be trying to explain why he ever started talking about childless cat ladies. Here he is on Fox last night, shortly after host Trey Gowdy, in his lead-in said, quote, the American people are forgiving if we ask. Senator Vance did not ask. J.D. Vance in context, and here's the former president on Fox defending him just moments ago.
What can you say to our viewers tonight to reassure them that this was an excellent pick?
Well, first of all, he's got tremendous support, and he really does among a certain group of people that like families. I mean, he made a statement having to do with families.
Here are some thoughts from political commentators on weird attacks directed at Trump and J.D. Vance.
Joining us now, senior political commentators Bakari Sellers, David Urban, and Ashley Allison, also former Hillary Clinton campaign manager Robbie Mook. So, Robbie, what do you make of this weird attack line the Democrats have been focusing on for J.D. Vance and Trump?
Well, I think a lot of what Donald Trump does and a lot of what J.D. Vance has been saying is indeed weird and been weird for some time. I think part of the challenge that Vance has been having is he's not really for anything at all. You know, what he said years ago about Trump was that he thought he was those were his words, that's what he called him. And all of a sudden now he wants to be his vice president. And so I think Vance just doesn't have a strong bed of credibility to fall back on. All that I would say, and I know you mentioned the Friedman piece here, is that two things can be true at the same time. The Republicans can be weird. J.D. Vance can be full of it. But also as Democrats, we have to go out and say what we're for. And so, you know, I don't think this is an either or here. We really need to get out and make our case. I'm confident that the Harris campaign is going to do that in the coming days.
Bakari, do you think these comments from Vance, I mean, does it turn off independents? According to a new ABC poll, Harris's favorability rating among independent voters at 44%, which is up from only 28% a week ago. Meanwhile, Vance's overall favorability didn't change last week, although his unfavorability rating went up.
Yeah, I mean, I think what most people look at, just smart people, not anybody who's on any particular aisle or anyone who watches nightly news consistently. But most people would simply say Nikki Haley was right there. Like, that was the choice for Donald Trump to make, a Nikki Haley or a Glenn Youngkin. But that would only be right. And that's not what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump went out and just doubled down on who Donald Trump is.
Vermin, the former president, on Veterans Day, no less, he went on to say, quote, "The threat from outside forces is far less sinister, dangerous, and grave than the threat from within. Our threat is from within." After that, he praised foreign dictators, calling the leaders of Russia, China, and North Korea, quote, "capable, competent, smart, and tough."
The Washington Post story on Trump's speech highlighted his use of inflammatory language to attack his political enemies.
The Washington Post story on his speech ran under the headline, "Trump calls political enemies vermin, echoing dictators Hitler, Mussolini." CNN presidential historian Tim Naftali telling the Post, "The language is the language that dictators use to instill fear. That's what dictators do." Other historians and scholars of fascism echo that assessment, to which the former president's campaign spokesman responded in words that also kind of sound an awful lot like things.
We're literally a banana republic. So what does it matter funding the government? The American people don't give a
That's Georgia Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene talking to CNN's Mano Raju. Separately, in a new letter CNN obtained today, House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan is proposing to defund federal and state prosecutions targeting what he called, quote, "political opponents." And as we reported last week, some of the former president's Senate allies are vowing to bottle up any legislation at all in response to the New York verdict. Now, let's remember, this was a state trial, not a federal one, and there's no evidence the federal Justice Department had any role whatsoever in it, let alone the Attorney General, let alone President Biden. Yet, from the beginning, the former president has, in almost a literal sense, tried to make a federal case out of it, a notion his supporters now fully embrace. House Speaker Mike Johnson, for one. Last week, he said the Supreme Court should get involved. Now he's saying Congress should with all it's got.
Listen, we are the rule of law party. Chaos is not a conservative value, and we have to fight back, and we will, with everything in our arsenal. But we do that within the confines of the rule of law. So what we'll do with our tools that we have in Congress, in the House, is we'll use our oversight responsibility. And we're going to look at Special Counsel Jack Smith, who we believe is abusing his authority as well. We have the funding streams. We have mechanisms to try to get control of that.
Jack Smith has successfully persuaded a duly appointed judge to approve a search warrant for highly classified documents.
Jack Smith, for the record, has managed to persuade a duly appointed judge to sign off on a search warrant that has yielded troves of highly classified documents with the former president squirreled away at Mar-a-Lago and attempted, according to prosecutors, to move those documents around to avoid detection. Smith has persuaded grand juries to indict Trump for that and also bring charges connected with January 6, all while being legitimately opposed in the courts up to and including the Supreme Court by the former president's legal team. None of that suggests a lack of due process, let alone evidence of wrongful prosecution. To the contrary, whatever else you might think of them and whoever you plan on voting for in November, President Biden and former President Trump see the world as differently one from another as any two modern-day candidates have. What's more, their differences are not trivial. They touch on decades of bipartisan consensus about the way American democracy and foreign policy works. And lately, The contrast between the two is increasingly on display, from campaign rallies to courthouses to cable news, and today a World War II monument to American Army Rangers who fought on D-Day 80 years ago.
We talk about democracy, American democracy. We often talk about the ideals of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. What we don't talk about is how hard it is. How many ways we're asked to walk away, how many instincts are to walk away. The most natural instinct is to walk away, to be selfish, to force our will upon others, to seize power, never give up. American democracy asks the hardest of things, to believe that we're part of something bigger than ourselves.
President Biden today at Pointe du Hoc in Normandy, saying what even a decade ago would neither have been especially remarkable nor freighted with the kind of meaning it carries now. The difference is context. Today, that perfectly unremarkable tribute to self-sacrifice landed hard on the heels of the former president again suggesting in a clip that was released last night that the entire federal justice system be deployed to avenge one individual, himself.
Well, revenge does take time, I will say that. It does. And sometimes revenge can be justified, Phil. I have to be honest. Sometimes it can.
That was the answer to Phil McGraw's attempt to do what Sean Hannity also failed to do the night before, namely get Donald Trump to stop talking so openly about seeking revenge. It hasn't worked, and just yesterday, the former president also called for members of the House January 6th committee to be indicted.
Steve Bannon is heading to prison for blowing off a subpoena from the committee.
Reaction, it appears, to his former strategist, Steve Bannon, being ordered to prison for defying a lawful subpoena from that committee. The same Steve Bannon who received a presidential pardon while being accused of bilking money from Trump supporters, claiming it would go to build a wall on the border during the final days of the Trump administration. President Biden, by contrast, just reaffirmed a commitment not to pardon his only surviving son, Hunter, who's on trial on charges. In his tribute to the Army Rangers today, President Biden also invoked Vladimir Putin's aggression and NATO's joint response.
They stood against Hitler's aggression. Does anyone doubt that they would want America to stand up against Putin's aggression here in Europe today? They stormed the beaches alongside our allies. Does anyone believe these Rangers would want America to go it alone today?
Well, for more than 7 decades since the end of the Second World War, the bipartisan answer to whether the United States should go it alone in the world has always been no. And outside the fringes, Democratic and Republican support for NATO has been, if not a given, then certainly the vast consensus. So in that, nothing President Biden said today would even raise an eyebrow, except, again, by contrast.
Max Laufner, known as one of the smartest kids in the world, is back after a few years out of the spotlight. In this video, we'll catch up with him and see what he's been up to during his time off. And we're excited to see how he's evolved and what new milestones he has reached.
And so the question that's been plaguing my existence for the past year now is, am I ready to move out into the world? Life isn't about setting up plans and succeeding with those plans. In my opinion, life is about setting up the journey.
Max Laufner shares his remarkable story, offering a detailed look into his journey.
A real-life Dexter's laboratory. Yeah, that's what he said. A whiz kid with a very powerful idea. Max Laufner shares his story in tonight's Someone to Know.
Do you think a 13-year-old could change the world? Well, this one might change your mind. Dressed in his lab coat.
Yeah, I wear this fairly often.
He is turning an old boiler room into a modern lab, transforming unused space into a cutting-edge environment for scientific exploration.
Max Laufner sits in his parents' old boiler room, converted into a lab.
I am in a boiler room right now.
And he ponders the future often.
The future that I imagine is the future, frankly, that we all imagine.
He wants to make the world a better place. And to do that, you need one single thing.
If you got energy, you got power.
To solve this problem, Max took charge by carefully examining the issue and creating a detailed plan.
You have everything.
So to solve this problem, a few months ago, Max took the matter into his own hands and created this electromagnetic harvester out of a coffee can, some wire, 2 coils, and a spoon.
This cost me $14.
The harvester conducts radio waves, thermal and static energy, and turns it into electricity.
This wire captures energy from the air and transfers it to our system, where it is then converted from AC to DC.
This wire takes the energy from the air. Down below here, we turn it from AC into DC.
So we take the device outside and wrap up Max's brother into a string of LED lights.
Bing!
A $14 invention was able to do that.
Imagine if the same energy harvester was scaled up to handle a much larger volume.
So imagine the same harvester on a scale 20 times larger.
I'm very proud of him.
Max's family is thrilled with what he's accomplished, and nobody is more impressed than his twin brother, Jack.
Creating free energy, a device that he made in his lab out of $15, which is pretty amazing.
From the moment he was born, he felt he was destined for something important.
As cheesy as this sounds, from day one on this planet, I knew that I was put on here for a reason, and that reason is to invent, to bring the future.
Max has always admired Albert Einstein and inventor Nikola Tesla. They taught him a little bit more than just science.
Work on making the world a better place by figuring out what's missing and stepping in to fill those gaps.
Make the world a better place, to give the world what it doesn't have so that it doesn't have to struggle in basic things like energy.
Max isn't in it for the money or the recognition.
My true goal is to help, to invent a future where people can be happy, people can be safe and sound.
That's one kid with a whole lot of power.
What is a senior passages presentation, and what does it involve?
So I'm sure most of you already know this, but what is a senior passage presentation? Well, it's a T's way of making me explain to you all that I'm ready to graduate and move into the real world.
The question that's been plaguing his existence for the past years now is, did he ready to move out into the world?
And so the question that's been plaguing my existence for the past year now is, am I ready to move out into the world? Am I ready for, this scary, crazy world of, taxes and college essays and student debt and cold, lonely nights, being legally responsible for my own actions and such? And, well, I think I am ready, and I've had a lot of time to think about this. Now, don't get me wrong, it's really tempting to say no. I'm absolutely not ready under any circumstances to be let into the real world. Because I just recently turned 18. I still feel like a kid, it's, and I would be very skeptical of anybody who tells you that they're not, that they're not the least bit anxious about this crazy change we're all about to go through in our lives. Anyways, so this whole thing is starting off with me thinking a lot about what really makes me ready. And I didn't really realize it until I started thinking about why. Why am I ready? And it became apparent to me when I thought about my biggest challenge and shortcoming, arguably, in high school, which was getting in way too deep, going over my head all the time. Some of you can relate to this, but the way that what I think of this, I think of perhaps the greatest example of this yet today, also the most recent, which was my individual senior intensive, which I did with Luke Jansen over there. So, a senior intensive, just in case you don't know, for you underclassmen, it's our magnum opus of our T experience.
It is the final product, showcasing their journey towards an area of interest and their efforts to make a difference in a community beyond their own.
So it's our final product. It's our way to identify an area of interest and then, actually try to make a difference in a community that's outside of T. It's kind of what we work hard for, our whole experience, high school experience. Cut out. So I wanted to be a scientific researcher as a kid, and I still do. That's my plan. And so I decided that I was going to try to do something, for my senior intensive to get into that. And being an aspiring STEM major, teamwork is obviously very important. And Luke Jansen and I kind of had the same sort of thought process here. So we decided to work together and do something really, really big. We decided to go National Geographic with our senior intensive and do something called photogrammetry. So that's just a fancy word for taking a real object or place, taking a whole bunch of photos, and from those photos, turning it into a 3D model. A highly accurate one at that. And so we decided to go completely into it. And so when struck, this whole field boomed. Because it meant that people were staying at home, so they couldn't go to museums, which is, if you've ever seen photogrammetry in real life, you would find it in a museum where there's a place or an artifact that they can't actually put in there, so they just show you a really accurate 3D model. And so places like the Smithsonian and organizations like Google started funding things called open heritage projects. The most notable was the Google Heritage Project. And that was basically a global, international initiative to basically have a whole bunch of professional researchers contribute to this area of photogrammetry and preserve historical and cultural heritage sites. And so that was it. We wanted in. Perfect.
Max was hard at work on a really tough quantum physics problem that seemed almost impossible to solve.
I was working on an impossible quantum physics problem, and unfortunately, I was commanded to go to sleep. Except I couldn't. I was in the mode. I was on the brink of solving a problem that I was trying to crack for weeks. So I pretended to go to sleep, like all of us have when we were children, and waited for everyone else to. And then I got up and ran straight to my lab. I worked all night into the morning, and then, well, it hit me. I fixed my mistakes and solved my problem. There it is. I solved an impossible problem. Impossible? I think not. The problem was solved, so was it really impossible in the first place? Most people have a relationship with the term impossible, or they say it can't be done ever. But maybe we need to change that. We need to redefine the impossible, because maybe nothing is impossible, just not known how to be done yet. Hello, everybody. My name is Max Lawhen, as you heard. So what's the meaning of all this? Why am I up here? Why is a scrawny 13-year-old up here on stage? Hopefully, this will all be clear by the end of all this. By the way, before I start this, remember I am just a teenager. My brain is still developing, and my neural synapses are firing like crazy. And to be honest, most of them are missing their intended target. So if I stutter or string together a set of words that make no sense or maybe fall down on my face or something, just, cut me a little slack. So here we go. I was 7 years old. Thank you. So I was 7 years old when I watched the Back to the Future trilogy for the first time. I got a visual representation of what people thought the future would be like. And I know this already. I'm guessing a lot of people here are Back to the Future fans. Am I right?
He created a visual representation of what people imagined the future would look like.
Okay, so in this movie trilogy, I got a visual representation of what people thought the future would be like. And what I thought the future would be like is, frankly, what the movie described it to be. Amazing. Well, as you can imagine, 2015 just came and went. And still no hoverboards. Yeah. And the closest thing we have today is a balancing Segway that catches on fire and blows up. Definitely not fair. We were all hoping we could zip around in flying cars, but instead, we have electric cars. Which, by the way, have been around since 1828, so, not new at all. So, what's the problem here? Are we not creative enough? Maybe we're not trying hard enough. Unfortunately, most of us were all just waiting. That's That's it. That's our big problem. We were waiting. Instead of reaching for that future and trying to create it, it seems that we're waiting for it to be served to us on a silver platter. Well, sorry, that's not good enough for me. So throughout my life, I spent every day I could trying to invent the future that we all imagined. I looked at many of the problems we have today in this world, designed, made, tested, all the solutions I could come up with. In my, well, boiler room turned laboratory, I'll just say I have limited resources. Instead of playing video games and watching TV, I was inventing new technology that I believe could change people's lives. Just to give you an idea of how my undeveloped brain works, at 5.5 I was solving complex algebraic equations in math class when everyone else was learning to add and subtract. The teacher had to give me brain teasers just to get me to shut up. At age 6, I wrote my first line of code in C++, which led me to, at the age of 7, hacking school computers that gave kids access to games that were banned for no reason, like Pac-Man. Stupid teachers.
At just 8 years old, he developed his first conductive liquid explosive, highlighting his exceptional inventive skills.
At the age of 8, I concocted my first conductive liquid explosive and had finished reading my 5th big physics book. Whew. At the age of 9, I set up a small business at school where kids brought me their broken technology and I fixed it for them. When I was 10, I finished my first of 3 online MIT courses on robotics and quantum physics. And then when I was 11, I built my first hydrofluorocarbon rocket engine and smart humanoid robot that was a really good fighter, by the way. And I also invented a new type of neurocranial transmitter that could detect emotions, as a matter of fact. Scares me a little bit. Finally, at 12, I began to deeply study quantum physics and started my company, Lawton Labs, LLC, Limited Liability Corporation. I mean, you know, because I actually couldn't get any lawsuits at my age. Also, I went to my first school dance. Turns out girls my age don't fancy nerdy physicists and inventors. Now I know. My bad. Now, here I am at 13, one of the youngest technology company CEOs in history, I'm told, working on a machine that will monitor quantum mechanics with an eye on someday building a quantum computer when I get my hands on the necessary materials, of course. Also, if you're any of the 7 million viewers that have seen me on social media, you know that I have invented a device that extracts electromagnetic energy from all around us and transfers it into electrical. And that also got the attention of Anonymous, who posted, "We should clone this kid" on their Facebook page. I'm a little bit paranoid from it. Too much for a shy 13-year-old such as myself to handle, I fear. So, as you can imagine, I obviously didn't have many friends. How else would I have all this time? But hopefully... Hopefully that'll change now that I'm here at Nexus.
If you wish to change somebody's life, where do you really start?
But where do you really start if you wish to change somebody's life? You can make an endless list of gizmos and gadgets, but when do you really impact somebody's life? I mean, so many problems and even more solutions to each one. I don't even know where to begin. Well, actually I do. Let me tell you a little bit about it. Every problem has a bigger source problem behind it, and ultimately I found that all of our modern technologies and electronics need energy. Also, a lot of places on the planet still don't have electricity when they need it for basic reasons like water filtration and light. And by the way, on top of all that, the #1 way that we're getting our energy for these devices is destroying our planet, our #1 resource. People can't afford energy, and it costs a lot. There's so many problems with it, so why can't we just make it more simple? Our world needs a low-cost, efficient energy source that won't run out and that is affordable. So I began to study alternative energy resources. I began to reach farther. What I set out to do was create a low-cost, unlimited energy source that had the potential to save our world from this core problem. You can see why I drive myself crazy. After finishing up a couple quantum physics books, I realized that everything in the universe has a frequency and vibration. That's right, people. Everything is just a frequency of energy. All of the energy in the universe is already here. It just needs to be transferred into a form in which you can use it. After further research around quantum physics and mechanics, I discovered that we can receive waste energy in the form of electromagnetism. So I got straight to work, of course. After 47 hours of straight working, I had finished the device. I had finished creating a device that takes waste electromagnetic energy from all around us and converts it into electrical. Here's how it works. You collect the energy on one side of the device, where it's then amplified, then polarized. The energy is then integrated into opposite polar semiconductors, where you put a coil around between and on each side of the electromagnetic module and collect the energy. Voila, free energy.
They do a lot of research and discovered a specific set that perfectly captured the essence of what they were trying to achieve.
So we did a lot of research, and we found out that we could order a specific set of to perfectly just capture really easily site that we picked out. We picked out a site. It was the Valley Fire State Park, which is right outside of Vegas. It's got some of the oldest and largest density of petroglyphs in the western United States. So we had everything figured out. We order our equipment, it kind of does the work for us, and then we just tidy it up and send it off. Boom, easy. Well, it didn't all go according to plan, and it actually, well, it went off the rails really fast, starting with the day before we were supposed to leave on our week-long intensive, when none of our equipment showed up. So we had to fall back on our backup plan, which was to do everything by hand, the hard way. To give you an idea of what that is, it is taking hundreds of perfectly calculated photos of the site, getting our hands on a highly powerful software designed for graphical software engineers, not students or anything, and then after that, rendering it all out and accompanying it with a research paper that detailed the methods of us actually creating our product. But why is that important? You know, I mean, as cool as I think the work was.
And I invented a device that could give a kid light in darkness so that he may choose to educate himself so that he has the opportunity to grow up and help more people. And maybe even join us here at Nexus someday, am I right? Now, this is what I call the ripple effect. You can throw a pebble into a pond and watch the ripples cover the pond and from where the ripple started and cover a much greater area than just the size of one tiny pebble. Now, I believe that I was put here for a reason. I have a feeling that there are also other people who are, put here for a reason. And I have a weird feeling that a lot of them are in this room today. I mean, am I alone? Does anybody else feel like they were put here for a reason? Can I get a show of hands, maybe? Awesome! So let's create some ripples, people. It has been a burden of mine to change the world. Almost like responsibility. It's my purpose. This burden or responsibility to change the world usually falls on the shoulders of few entrepreneurs. Now, I cannot think of a larger concentration of entrepreneurs than in this room right now. So imagine if everybody in this room here at Nexus, imagine what the world would be like if everybody tried to make the world a better place. Every single one did everything they can. We could all go our separate ways. One person goes this way. Maybe this way over here. I don't know, maybe walks off stage and leaves the auditorium or something. But what if we worked together to make an impact or multiple impacts or ripples? If you don't mind working with a 13-year-old who still has synopsises firing in random direction and works out of a boiler room in his parents' basement, then we together have the power to change this world for the better. To reach into the future and bring it just a little bit closer to today.
It's a bit embarrassing for Max to look back and see himself as a child wearing a lab coat every day.
You know that I wore a lab coat almost every single day, up until I was in high school. Yeah, it's really embarrassing. If you've seen any photos of me in old tea books, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, so I had a lot of big dreams. I wanted to go to MIT. I wanted to go out and change the world. I wanted to do a lot. And some of those things I somewhat far on, but ultimately I, as Beth said, didn't get into MIT. There's a lot of other goals that I didn't reach as well, but I tried my hardest for them. And this year, I applied for MIT, got everything, put my heart and soul into it. I got into the final applicant pool, and I guess in the final decision, I wasn't one of the ones chosen. And was that painful? Yeah, for a little bit. But life isn't about setting up plans and succeeding with those plans. In my opinion, life is about setting up the journey.